Hello and welcome to this lesson for Guitar World Talkin' Blues. This month we're going to talk about a phenomenon which really influenced the sound of American popular music, but one that you probably are not even aware of, and this is this kind of combination of straight beats and shuffle beats. Now, to give you a little background on this, when you talk about a musical style, whatever it is, it really comes down to the beat. That's the one thing that, above all, separates one style from another. Once the drummer starts playing, no guitar, no bass, no nothing, you pretty much can tell what the style is just from the beat. And even though there are hundreds of variations of beats and popular styles, you know, dance music has unbelievable number of little subdivisions that you're into or not. What it comes down to in technical terms is that there are two main ways that you can divide a beat that kind of dictate the overall style. And that is that you can divide a beat into two parts, two equal parts, eighth notes or 16th notes, or you can divide a beat into three equal parts, the triplet, which yields the shuffle or swing. But when you get down into the dirt and figure out how those beats really work, you find that there's a funny little phenomenon that happens sometimes, which is certain grooves and certain feels are neither exactly one or the other. They're a little bit of both. Now, I noticed this first when I was listening to records, some records that were made during the 1950s. And in American popular music, if you lived in the first half of the 20th century, most of the music that you would hear on the radio or you'd dance to when you went out to a club or listen on records, it was based on triplets. It was shuffle, blues, or swing. You know, the big swing craze of the 30s and 40s dominated popular music. So everybody danced to triplets all the time. In the 50s, it started to shift over, and after that, you know, the 60s came along, all music had basically switched over to straight beats, straight eighth notes, straight 16th notes. Rock as a whole is based on the straight eighth note. Now, I don't know if anybody's yet earned their PhD figuring out how and why this happened, but just in observing it, I noticed that all the rock bands that I was into in the 60s played straight, and all the blues bands that I got into played shuffle. And in the 50s, there were some recordings where there was shuffle and straight going on at the same time. And that kind of helped illuminate for me one of these little mysteries of blues, which is what we just basically call feel. All right? Now, check it out. Great example, primary example of this mixed phenomenon is one of the most famous records in popular music. I think it was sent away on one of the satellites out into space. Chuck Berry, Johnny Be Good. All right. Now Chuck was inspired to play that opening lick. That lick really was derived from a guy named Louis Jordan, who had a hit record in the 40s called Ain't That Just Like a Woman. And the guitar player on that record played a lick pretty much like that. So Chuck learned that lick, and then he wrote his own song around it. And when he recorded that song in 1956, he was playing for Chess Records. Now, Chess was a famous blues label. Muddy Waters, Howlin' Wolf, all those guys were on Chess. And so the rhythm section was all musicians who were basically professional blues musicians. And blues was, and remains to this day, traditionally based around the shuffle. So imagine, and I don't know that this happened, but I can picture it. Here comes Chuck walking into the studio all cocky. You know, he's young and he's fresh and he's got this new thing going on and he's very hip. And here are these guys in the band and they're saying, okay, yeah, here comes this kid, you know, let's make a record together. Chuck starts playing the guitar, the band falls into their natural groove. And what happens? The band is playing swing and Chuck is playing straight eighth notes. Right? Now, here's how that works technically. I'm going to play you an example of some drums only playing a shuffle beat. And now normally if you just play a note against the shuffle, you almost without fail are going to fall into whatever beat the drummer's playing. It's hard not to, right? But in this recording and in this sort of phenomenon, you've got the two feels going on simultaneously, and yet it creates this third feel that's also got its own particular little vibe that's very cool. Check it out, okay? I'm going to play shuffle drums, and I'm going to play straight eighth notes against it, and you see what it sounds like. just one note, of course. Now I'm going to shuffle with the drums. Now I'm going to go back to straight. Here we go. Okay. Now, pretty subtle difference, because at that tempo, that's about 100 on the metronome or so. The difference between a triplet and a straight eighth note, you got to cut it with a razor blade. But it's a pretty profound difference in feeling. When I play shuffle with the drums, it feels like we're all exactly on the same page. Everybody's synchronized. When I play straight, there's a little tension that's created in there. Now, tension is not always a bad thing. That translates into energy when it's played well. So let's take it a step further, and I'm going to play rhythm, like using the chord patterns, typical shuffle boogie pattern, and then I'm going to play the Chuck Berry Johnny B. Good pattern, which is a straight eighth note against that shuffle. And let's listen to what this sounds like. First shuffle. Okay, now I'm going to play straight. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? Now, you feel that there's kind of a little push-pull thing going on between my guitar and the band. But when you listen to Johnny B. Good, and you definitely should, you know, don't listen to all the 1,000,001 versions of Johnny. Listen to 1956 Chuck Berry Chess Records, Johnny B. Good. You'll hear exactly what I'm talking about. It's magic. Something going on that recording that you don't hear on all the various cover versions that have been done. And when you listen carefully, you'll hear Chuck's playing straight, the band's playing swing, and it's really cool, all right? Now, Chuck wasn't the first guy in history ever to do that. T-Bone Walker, who was one of Chuck's big idols, the guy that Chuck studied very carefully, would do the same thing when he was soloing. What he would do when the band was playing like an up-tempo swing feel, he would deliberately play straight eighth notes against that shuffle feel, and it would give the phrasing this kind of funny laid-back quality. It's hard to describe, but it actually works pretty good when you hear it in context. So now I'm going to play. I'll play an up-tempo shuffle for you, and I'm going to play, first of all, just a scale. This is in B flat. I'm just going to play a scale up and down using the shuffle feel. Then I'm going to play the same scale using a straight feel, and then expand on it a little bit and maybe jam a little bit, and you can hear what it sounds like, okay? Okay, now, shuffle. Now straight. Shuffle. Straight. Shuffle. Straight. Okay. Now, we'll do that again, and what I'm going to do is stretch out a little bit and play more typical blues licks. And again, at that tempo, that's even faster. The difference between the triplet and the straight feel gets more and more subtle. But here's the cool thing, and this is why this whole thing really isn't about a history lesson about some weird records made in the 50s. It's about the real feel of blues and swing, which is not exactly what you see on the page. When you notate a triplet on the page, of course, you get 3 equal notes per beat. Take out that middle note and you get the shuffle. And when you play that literally, you get. Now, when people use that literal feel and jam and play blues, it sounds kind of bouncy, and in a way it sounds kind of like it's just wrong. You know, it doesn't have the vibe that we associate with blues and jazz, which is kind of cool and laid back. So literally playing that triplet gives you a feel that is not really appropriate to the style. When you play straight, right, that creates that tension that we were talking about earlier, which is hard to define, but it sort of makes the note feel like it's kind of pushing and pulling against the rhythm. Now, the real feel that you hear in blues and jazz is sort of between the triplet and the straight. It's a hard thing to pin down, but this is the idea of the lesson, is to get you listening and feeling it and seeing what it feels like under your fingers when you actually do it, okay? Now, I'm going to jam on that same track, and I'll call it out to you as I shift feels, but you should be able to hear it as well, okay? So here we go. Starting in shuffle. Now, I shifted a half a dozen times in there from one to the other, and you can kind of hear that when I go to the straight feel, it feels like suddenly I'm kind of pulling back a little bit, all right? And when I go to the shuffle feel, I bounce along with the band, but I'm not getting bouncy like you know, nursery rhyme bouncy. It's sort of cool. And so the feeling that I'm shooting for is a laid back quality, which is really just in between the shuffle and the straight feel, okay? Now, it works the other way as well. I'm going to show you an example of some straight eighth note drums, and I'm going to play shuffle against that. And you'll hear another version of this kind of tension, which creates an interesting and a kind of a laid back quality. Back in the key of A again. Now, the drums are very straight. Straight eighth notes. Shuffle. Straight. Shuffle. Straight. So you could hear there again where I shifted from shuffle to straight. The drums are straight. When I play straight, we're locked in together. And then when I shuffle, it feels like I'm kind of pushing and pulling against the beat a little bit. But it makes my phrases also feel like they kind of lay back in an interesting way. So in the end, the idea of mixing those feels is something that you don't hear very often in contemporary music. Could be for a variety of reasons. One is the computers don't tend to like this sort of ambiguity, and so you know, if you play according to the rules, everything locks up very precisely. But when you listen to these recordings in particular, another great example is Howlin' Wolf's Backdoor Man. There's like shuffling straight going on all the way through it. It's just got the coolest vibe ever, you know. That's something that you can create organically as you play, and it makes your playing sound a little bit different. And when you listen to great players, you'll hear that quite often as sort of a subtext in how the phrasing works, that it's pushing and pulling a little bit against the groove, and it ultimately has that kind of in-between feel that makes it sound very cool and very laid back. All right, I'm going to take it on out of here with a little solo that's going to mix a little of shuffle and straight for you, and hope you enjoyed this lesson. And I'll see you the next time.